My stepdaughter called me the family embarrassment. I removed her from my policy, shifted every expense onto her dad, and cut her card access. Now shame comes with a price tag. Subscribe to the channel and share your stories in the comments. And now let's get started. I was 43 when I married Emily. She came with two shadows, Jake, 17, and Leah, 15. The boy wore silence like armor. The girl, sarcasm like a knife. From the start, they weren't mine, but I believed that love, real love, could fill the gap. I believed that showing up would matter more than blood. That maybe, over time, presence would outweigh DNA. So I showed up. Every damn day. I fixed the gutters Jake refused to clean. Painted Leah's room her favorite shade of blue twice, because she changed her mind halfway through. She never said thanks. Just walked in, tossed her backpack on the bed, and mumbled, "It's fine, I guess." I smiled anyway, told myself that teenagers don't say thank you, not because they don't care, but because they haven't learned how yet. I paid for Leah's violin lessons, Jake's basketball fees, birthday cakes, class trips, doctor bills. I never told them no. I never let the silence grow too wide. I thought if I keep the house warm, if I keep the fridge full, if I'm just there, they'll see me. They'll understand. Mark, their real father, showed up in bursts. Loud entrances, louder exits. Missed birthdays patched over with last-minute gifts still in the bag. Cheap electronics. Brand-name shoes in the wrong size. Apologies wrapped in charm. And they forgave him. Every time. They called him Dad. Like it meant something. Like he was still holding that position even after abandoning the job. Me? I was Michael. Or worse. The guy living with Mom. Jake never spoke to me unless it was to ask for money. "Can I borrow your card? Do you have cash? I need gas." Leah would roll her eyes when I asked her how school went, earbuds already in. One afternoon, I caught her whispering to her friend on the phone. "He tries so hard. It's kind of pathetic." That one stayed with me, longer than it should have. But I didn't snap. I never snapped. I stayed quiet, stubborn. I believed if I just kept doing right, they'd come around. I believed in the slow currency of respect, how it accumulates with time and sacrifice. Emily said nothing most of the time. I'd bring it up. The tone, the cold shoulders, the offhand comments. And she'd deflect. "They're teenagers. It's not personal." Or worse, "You're being too sensitive." But it was personal. It was always personal. Every meal I cooked that was left untouched. Every ride I offered that they took without a word. Every holiday I spent more time planning than enjoying. All of it built a quiet resentment I tried to bury. I kept hoping for one thing, one gesture that would tell me I wasn't just tolerated in my own home. It never came. Our house had 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, and a silence that could drown a man. At the dinner table, they talked around me. Never to me. I'd ask a question and get one-word answers. I'd bring up a movie we could watch, and Leah would say, "We already saw it with Dad." Jake would scroll through his phone, earbuds in, nodding to music I couldn't hear. And Emily, she just looked tired. Not tired of them. Tired of me. Tired of the weight I carried and the way I kept asking her to notice it. She'd say, "Michael, just let it go." Like my pain was a hobby I refused to quit. Some nights I'd stay up late, just sitting in the garage. Not doing anything. Just existing in a place that didn't expect anything from me. The car smelled like oil and old receipts, but it was quiet. It was mine. I kept telling myself it would get better. That they'd grow up, grow out of it. That the day would come when Leah would call me from college, needing advice, needing me. That Jake would walk in one day and say, "Thanks for everything." I fed myself that fantasy like a drug. Because the truth I didn't want to admit was that I was alone. In my marriage. In my house. In the family I was trying to build from borrowed pieces. Mark had already left the game, but somehow he still got to keep the jersey. I was the one putting in the hours, but they cheered for him. Every late-night call they had with him. Every inside joke. Every family story I didn't know because I hadn't been there when they were small. Reminded me of what I wasn't. I wasn't part of their beginning. And because of that, they never let me be part of their middle. One night, around Thanksgiving, I took Jake to the auto shop because his car was stalling. I paid for the diagnostics, paid for the repair, waited 2 hours in a freezing lobby while he played on his phone. On the way home, I said, "You know, I'm happy to help, but you could have said thanks." He didn't even look at me, just said, "Did I ask you to?" That was the first time I felt something snap inside. Not all at once, just a single hairline crack in the dam. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just drove the rest of the way in silence, teeth grinding. Emily, when I told her later, just sighed. He didn't mean it like that. But he did. They all meant it like that. Every time they called Mark Dad. It wasn't just habit. It was rejection. A choice. A reminder. I could carry the weight, but I couldn't earn the title. Even the dog. A golden retriever named Max that I rescued, trained, fed, ran to Jake when he got home. I was the background noise, the steady hum in a house tuned to a different frequency. I thought maybe a family trip would help. Something to reset the balance. I started planning in secret, browsing rentals, researching lake houses, thinking maybe if we just got away. If we stripped away the distractions, we'd finally see each other clearly. That's what hope does. It clings, even after it's been starved. But as winter deepened, so did the cracks. And what I didn't know then, what I hadn't yet let myself believe, was that this family wasn't cracking. It was already broken. It was supposed to be a gift. One last trip before everything changed. Jake's senior year. Leah just a step behind. I thought, naively, that maybe a lake house, a boat, warm nights by the fire pit, could smooth the fractures that had grown in our walls. That the smell of pine and barbecue smoke might do what years of quiet sacrifice could not. I booked it all myself. No fanfare, no announcement, just silent, methodical planning. A week at Lake Denville. 4-bedroom house, wraparound deck, pontoon boat docked and ready. I ordered fishing rods, marshmallow skewers, even waterproof speakers for the kids' music. I wanted it to feel effortless, like magic, like something that just appeared because someone out there still gave a damn. That someone was me. When I told them about it, sitting around the kitchen island, bills in one hand, coffee in the other, I expected at least some flicker of gratitude. Not a standing ovation. Not even a "thanks, Michael." Just a nod. A glance. Something. Instead, Jake smirked and said, "Cool." Leah didn't even look up from her phone. Emily smiled, touched my arm. "That sounds nice." Nice. The word stung, but I swallowed it. I told myself this was just the beginning. Once we were there, they'd feel it. The air. The calm. The reset. Maybe they'd look at me like I wasn't just some fixture in their lives. Not the faucet that never runs dry. Not the walking wallet in a worn-out hoodie. Then Emily brought it up. "Hey," she said one evening, almost offhand. The kids were thinking, maybe their dad could come up for a couple of days, just to hang out. They haven't seen him much this summer. Maybe he could drive down, stay a night or two. She said it like it was nothing, like it wouldn't take a sledgehammer to the ribs. I didn't speak at first. I stared at the open laptop in front of me, the reservation email glowing on the screen. Her voice hung in the air like a question with no possible answer that wouldn't end in a fight. "Just a thought," she added. "It might be good for them." Good for them. I closed the laptop. "You mean to tell me," I said slowly, "that after I paid for all this, planned it, booked it, stocked it with everything they could want, you want him to show up and enjoy it?" She blinked. "It's not about that. It's about the kids. The same kids who won't call me their stepdad, who roll their eyes when I ask how their day was, who treat me like a stranger in my own house." Emily shifted. "You're taking this too personally." I looked at her then, really looked, and what I saw wasn't confusion. It wasn't guilt. It was resignation. She had already agreed. This wasn't a conversation. It was a warning. That night, I sat on the back deck and watched the porch light flicker against the wind. Jake came out around midnight. Hoodie, bare feet, phone in hand. He didn't notice me until I said his name. "You really want your dad there?" I asked, calm, measured. already knowing the answer. Jake shrugged. He said he might bring his jet ski. That's what it was about. Toy. Not a man. Not a father. Just another distraction with horsepower and noise. I nodded, trying to swallow the rising bile. He's not paying for this trip. You know that, right? Jake looked at me then, flat and unreadable. So maybe, just maybe, you could consider how that makes me feel. His lips twitched, not into a smile, into something meaner. I don't really care how you feel. The words punched harder than I thought they could. I stood up, stared at the boy who had lived under my roof for 6 years. I'd helped him pass algebra, took him to the ER when he broke his wrist skateboarding, sat through every parent-teacher night while Mark was off God knows where. And he didn't care. Leah appeared in the doorway. She'd heard it. She always did. Don't start something, she warned. I'm not, I said. Just talking. She stepped outside, arms folded across her chest. Look, if it bothers you that much, maybe don't come. Excuse me? You act like we owe you something just because you pay for stuff, she snapped. It's pathetic. You're not even our real dad. I swallowed hard. You think your father would do half of what I've done for you? She rolled her eyes. At least he doesn't beg for approval. And then she said it. The sentence I'll remember even if I live to 90. You're an embarrassment to our family. You're not one of us. Silence fell. Jake didn't flinch. Leah didn't back down. They stared at me like the intruder I suddenly realized I'd always been. I didn't respond. Not with words. I just turned and walked back inside, my ears ringing. Emily stood in the hallway, having heard it all. Her mouth opened, then closed again. I waited. She said nothing. That's when I knew. Knew I'd lost. Not just the argument. Not just the trip. I'd lost the illusion. The hope. The belief that effort would someday matter more than blood. I didn't rage. I didn't yell. I simply sat down at the kitchen table, opened my laptop again, and went to work. First, the insurance portal. Leah's name, removed. She was 15. Her coverage had always been a kindness, not an obligation. A kindness I no longer had to offer. Next, the joint account. I canceled the family card, the one they used for fast food, movie tickets, Amazon buys. I logged into the lake house rental, canceled it. A full refund minus a small fee. Worth it. Then I opened a blank Word document and began listing what I would transfer. Her school expenses to Mark. Any future bills to Emily. I itemized everything. Quietly, methodically, like an accountant tallying the cost of a failed investment. Because that's what I had been. An investor in a family that never planned to pay me back. That night, I packed my things. Just the essentials. A few shirts, my tools, the box of keepsakes I never had the heart to throw away. I didn't slam any doors. I didn't leave a note. I simply left. The sunrise. While they slept. No goodbye. No apology. No explanation. By the time they noticed, I was already halfway across state lines. Driving with the windows down and no music playing. Just the wind and the quiet click of the blinker as I exited the life I'd spent years trying to build. The calls started around noon. Emily first, then Leah, then silence. That evening, a single email. Subject: Did you really cancel everything? No greeting. No name. Just those 5 words. I stared at the screen for a long time before I typed my reply. Yes, embarrassment comes with a bill now. I hit send. Then I shut my laptop, leaned back, and stared at the ceiling of the cheap motel I'd found off Route 16. The air conditioner rattled. The sheets smelled like bleach. But it was mine. Mine alone. And in that sterile, silent room, I finally stopped waiting to be thanked. The lake house was quiet after they left. Not peaceful, not yet, but quiet in the way a battlefield is after the bodies have been dragged away. I sat on the porch in the same chair I used when I still thought of it as our vacation, not my exile. The air was still heavy with their noise, their outrage, their shock that someone who had given so much could suddenly stop. But it wasn't sudden. It never is. People think a man breaks all at once, that he explodes, shouts, slams things. But no, it's quieter than that. Slower. more surgical. My break had been years in the making, carved by silence, disrespect, and 1,000 moments that no one noticed but me. I watched the sun rise over the water. My hands didn't tremble. My jaw didn't clench. I felt clean. That day, I didn't receive a single call. Not from Emily. Not from the kids. Not even a guilt-laced voicemail. I suppose they thought if they gave me a day, I'd come crawling back, wallet in hand, apology already forming in my mouth. But I didn't, and I wouldn't. Instead, I drove into town, bought coffee from a quiet cafe, sat at a corner table and pulled out my phone. There were things that needed to be undone. First, the legal side. Leah was still listed on my insurance, health, dental, vision. I called the agent, gave the policy number, and asked what was needed to remove her. The woman on the other end sounded surprised. "Are you sure?" she asked. "You've had this dependent listed for 5 years." "I'm sure," I said. "She has a biological father. It's time he earned the title." I signed the forms electronically before my coffee even cooled. Next came the school accounts. Jake's tuition had been covered by a mixture of automatic transfers and a small college fund I'd started when I married Emily. I drained the account, redirected what was left, not much, into a savings account under my name only. I stared at the balance. It felt smaller than it should have been. But then, respect isn't bought in dollars. It's destroyed with words. The card Leah used for rideshare apps and monthly makeup subscriptions. Cancelled. The Venmo transfers I used to send Jake grocery money when he pretended to be broke. Stopped. The Amazon account with my name on the Prime membership and their wishlist saved, deleted. I went line by line, not out of spite, out of clarity. If I truly wasn't their family, then my name shouldn't carry their burdens. Around noon, my phone buzzed. Emily. I didn't answer. She called again, then again. 6 times. The 7th came with a voicemail. I didn't listen. That evening, an email. The subject line was blank. The message: "We need to talk. You're overreacting." I stared at it. I let it sit there in my inbox like spoiled fruit. I didn't reply. That night, alone in the house I'd filled with food and warmth and care, I made myself dinner. Pasta, sauce from a jar, the same brand Leah used to scoff at. I ate in silence. And for once, I didn't feel invisible. I felt real, present, unapologetic. The next day, the storm came. Emily arrived in person. No warning. Just the sound of tires on gravel and the slam of a car door. She didn't knock. She walked in like she still had a place here. I was sitting at the table, same spot where I'd canceled their future. "Michael," she said, "we need to talk." "No," I replied. "You need to listen." She blinked. Not what she expected. "They're kids," she started. "They're angry. You embarrassed them. Humiliated them." "I taught them a lesson," I said. "One you never did. That words have weight. That disrespect has cost. They're teenagers. They don't mean half of what they say." "No," I said, standing. "They meant every word. And you let them. You've let them for years." She opened her mouth to protest, but I held up a hand. "Do you know how many meals I made that went untouched? How many birthday presents I bought that were re-gifted or ignored? How many times I sat in a room full of your family and was introduced as Michael, never husband, never stepfather?" Her face flushed. She looked away. "I paid for their lives, and they spat on mine." "You're being dramatic," she said quietly. "No, I'm being honest. Something you haven't been." Silence settled between us. She finally sat down. Her voice, when it returned, was smaller. "What happens now?" I looked at her, really looked, and for the first time I saw someone I couldn't protect anymore. "You go home. You explain to Jake that college isn't free. You explain to Leah that makeup and rideshares cost money. You call Mark and you remind him that biology comes with bills. And you live with the family you allowed them to become." "And you?" she asked. "I stay here, alone. Not because I want to be, but because I'd rather be alone than be used." She didn't cry. I think part of her expected this. maybe even welcomed it. My exit gave her permission to stop pretending. Maybe she'd always known they'd never accept me. She stood. She paused at the door. They'll hate you for this. I shrugged. They already did. That was 3 days ago. I haven't heard from them since. No calls. No texts. No apologies. But this morning I checked Jake's school account. There's been no payment. The deadline is close. The tuition portal is red. Leah's Instagram stories are quieter than usual. Probably can't afford the data overage. Ryan, the dog, still whines when he hears a car door. But he doesn't run to the window anymore. The house is mine again. And in the silence, something unexpected has taken root. Peace. I still wake up early. Still make coffee for 2 out of habit. Still glance at my phone expecting a message that won't come. But the ache is quieter now. The storm has passed. And the wreckage they left behind is not mine to clean up anymore. A month passed before I heard her voice again. It came through the phone late one evening. That quiet hour when the lake turns black and the cicadas fall silent. Emily didn't say hello. She just breathed for a while, like she was measuring how much of me was still left to reach. Michael, she said finally. Can we meet? Her voice sounded older, brittle, like someone who had spent weeks speaking only to walls. I told her I'd think about it, but we both knew I would. The next day we met at a diner halfway between her house and mine, neutral ground. She looked smaller somehow. The woman who once filled a room with noise now stared into a coffee cup like it might tell her how to begin. She didn't wear her ring. I wasn't surprised. How are the kids? I asked, though I already knew. Her lips pressed into a line. Leah's been withdrawn. Jake, he's angry. He says he's not going back to school. I nodded slowly. Can't or won't? She didn't answer. The waitress poured coffee. Steam rose between us like fog over the lake. Emily sighed. They didn't understand what they were saying, Michael. You know how teenagers are. They lash out. You were supposed to be the adult. I let out a breath that tasted like restraint. I was the adult. That's why I stopped paying for their tantrums. Her eyes lifted, sharp for the first time in weeks. You punish children. No, I said softly. I stopped rewarding cruelty. She blinked hard, as if she'd been slapped. Then she said something I never expected. Mark can't keep up. He thought you were bluffing. Now Jake's tuition's overdue, and Leah's insurance expired. We're drowning, Michael. I stirred my coffee, listening to the clink of the spoon against porcelain. That sounds like a family problem, I said. Yours, not mine. Don't do this, she whispered. You're not heartless. I met her gaze. Maybe not, but I've finally learned to stop setting myself on fire to keep everyone else warm. She flinched, and I realized how foreign those words must have sounded coming from me. The man who used to say yes to everything, who filled every gap left by their father, who believed endurance was love. We sat in silence for a long time. She dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. I watched the waitress refill our cups. Outside, rain had started to fall. A soft, forgiving rain that turned the asphalt silver. Leah asked about you, Emily said quietly. She said maybe she went too far. She's been looking at old photos. The trip to the coast, her recital, the birthday dinners. She said she didn't realize how much you did. I felt something move in my chest. Not forgiveness. Not quite. More like the ghost of it. What did you tell her? I asked. That you won't come back. She was right. Because the truth is, once respect dies, it doesn't come back as love. It comes back as guilt. And guilt doesn't rebuild families. It only haunts them. I paid for the coffee and stood to leave. She caught my wrist. Michael, she said, voice cracking. They miss you. No, I said gently. They miss what I gave them. I walked out before she could reply. Outside, the rain hit my shoulders like applause for an ending no one wanted to see. I drove back to the lake house, headlights cutting through mist, radio off, mind quiet. The closer I got, the lighter I felt. When I reached the house, I didn't go inside right away. I stood on the porch, looking out over the black water. The air smelled of wet pine and cold stone. In the reflection on the lake, I saw myself smaller, older, but unburdened. I thought about Leah's words that night. "You're an embarrassment to our family. You're not one of us." She was right in her way. I never was. Family, I've learned, isn't defined by who eats at your table or who shares your name. It's defined by who values your presence when they don't need your money. By who sees the weight you carry and chooses to lift a little of it, not add more. I gave them everything but boundaries. And when they finally broke me, I realized that generosity without limits isn't kindness. It's self-erasure. The silence that followed my leaving was the first honest thing we ever shared. It forced them to face the truth. That Comfort had a provider, and that provider had finally stopped pretending he didn't notice the contempt in his own home. A week after the diner, I received an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside, a single sheet of paper. A handwritten note in Leah's sharp, slanted script. I said things I didn't mean. I was cruel. I thought you'd always stay. I'm sorry. There was no request for money. No excuses. Just that. I read it once, twice, then folded it neatly and placed it in the drawer beside my bed. Not to forgive her, not yet, but because it was the first time anyone in that house had spoken to me without taking something. That night, for the first time in years, I slept deeply. The next morning, I woke before dawn. The lake was still. Mist floated over the surface like a breath held too long. I made coffee, black and bitter, and sat on the porch steps. I thought about calling Emily, about replying to Leah, but some things lose their meaning when revisited. Apologies made after the damage are like flowers laid on graves. They don't bring the dead back. They only decorate the loss. Instead, I whispered into the morning air, not to them, but to myself. You did enough. And maybe that was the lesson all along. That enough is something you decide for yourself, not something you let others measure. I still fix things. It's what I do. The faucet leaks. I repair it. The porch creaks. I sand and seal it. But I no longer fix people who break me to see how far I'll bend. Sometimes, in the quiet, I wonder if Jake ever made it back to school, or if Leah's new apology is real. I wonder if Emily still looks for my car in the driveway when she drives past town. Then I remind myself, wondering is not the same as wanting. Life doesn't give closure. It gives distance. You fill that distance with either bitterness or peace. I chose peace. And maybe that's all that's left to say. Because when the bills stop coming, when the phone stops ringing, when the silence finally settles into something you can breathe, that's when you realize the truth every stepfather learns too late. Love without respect is just servitude dressed as virtue. And I've served enough lifetimes already. So now, when I think of them, I don't feel anger or longing. Only a steady, unflinching calm. They will learn. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow. But someday, when life hands them their own ungrateful mouths to feed, they'll hear my voice echoing back from the past. Not out of spite, but as a mirror. And they'll understand what it costs to be taken for granted. Until then, I live quietly. I rise with the dawn, drink my coffee, watch the water move, and remind myself of the simplest truth I've ever learned. Respect is the only currency that never inflates, never expires, and once spent carelessly is gone forever. So tell me, after all that, after years of giving, breaking, forgiving, was I wrong to walk away? Or was I finally right to stop paying for love that never existed?